The future of talk is here. Power 102 Digital.
This is Power 102 Digital Friday. Today's edition of Hot Talk puts a spotlight on the Single Fathers Association led by Rondell Fields. Good afternoon, Rondell. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Brother Mark. Thanks for having us again. As always, we must extend greetings to Power 102, Live 102 FM, for giving us this spotlight, giving us this opportunity to get down to the hard discussions. This is something that we love to do at our organization, the Fathers Association in Trinidad and Tobago. So we just want to welcome everyone here today, Trinidad and Tobago, the listening public, those who are maybe on YouTube, those who are on Facebook. We want to welcome you guys with us here today. And that song was so fitting for the topic we're going to discuss today. We're looking at discussing men, boys, and crime. And let me go into that a little bit before. I introduce my co-host and my panel here with me as well. And as men, boys, and crime, is there any interrelation? Is it, you are doomed to become a criminal if you are a boy? Does a gender matter? Does your race matter? There's a reason that we left it as open-ended because the panelists are very experienced in the field. And all of them and all the works that we do on the ground as well. And we want to weigh into it. Is it that the way we educate boys a problem? Boys, the music listening that boys are listening to a problem? Is it the homes they're exposed to? Is it fatherlessness that is the problem? We love to hear that one. Is it bad parenting, music? Is it amalgamation of it all? So definitely we want to weigh into the discussion on boys, men, and crime because, we are seeing a number of young men in our society, particularly in Trinidad, more so than in Tobago, that we're seeing getting involved in crime. We are seeing a number of them falling at the wayside, getting involved in gang life, gang activity. Not to say, we always mention those boys, but there are other boys that are doing exceptionally well as well and are excelling as well. Is it an issue where we always harp on the negative more than the positive or highlight the negative over the positive as well? We expected to have Mr. Justin Lewis as well from the Dash Race Youth Empowerment Committee, the enterprise community. That this was a community-based organization, NGO that was formed in the Dash Race Youth Empowerment, in the Dash Race area, in the enterprise community, to positively impact and empower their community. And they've been doing so for the last 5 years and been doing a great job. So without further ado, let me introduce the guys with me here today. To my right on the screen, that is, I know the listeners can't see this. I have Mr. Ted Jones. Ted Jones is a businessman. He hails from the lovely island of Tobago. He's also our representative on the Tobago side of things. We have Mr. Ted Jones here with us. Ted has been with us over some years now. He's always been involved in Trinidad, Tobago. He's always been involved in a lot of things that empowers young boys, men, mentorship, entrepreneurship. He's a businessman in Tobago, well-known Ted Jones across the island in Tobago and the little isle of Tobago. And for those of you looking on again, just below me, you'll see Mr. Wendell or Dr. Wendell Wallace. A great author, great researcher, lecturer at UWI. And the thing I like about Dr. Wallace, I like how he's real about it. He just doesn't use a statistic. He's on the ground, he's involved. He has a passion for what he does. So I don't think there's anybody better when it comes to speaking on these issues as well. So, I'm glad to have you guys here. Must welcome you guys. Ted, I'd have to welcome you. I don't know if you want to say anything from the Tobago neck of things.
Yes, well, good evening to all. Good afternoon to everyone. I hope you all are hearing me well. I was in Trinidad this morning. I just landed, so forgive the croaky voice, right? I also want to say a special good afternoon to all the listeners on Power 102, right? Your numbers and your members and your listeners are indeed going to change our country, going to change our world. And we really want to thank you all for tuning in. By way of introduction, yes, Rondell said it well. I don't really have much more to add except to say that it is my passion that our young men live, grow, and our men grow to fulfill their purpose really fundamentally, and that they are maximized. I think a world in itself, the entire world, is a much better place when our men live to their full potential, our boys and our men in particular live to their full potential, then we would have a society that everyone could feel much better in. So I would just leave it at there at that point in time until we go further, guys.
Oh, and Dr. Wallace, as Ted talked about his inspiration and what drives him, his motivation, and what drives him to continue his advocacy. And not just advocacy, I mean, his layman service for men, for boys, and I mean, we even represent women as well. Tell me about yourself. Now, I know the Dr. Wallace, I know the lecturer, but let us know about Dr. Wallace. What pushed you in that direction to write? I know you have books when it comes to gang activity. I have one of your books as well. Tell us what drove you. What on the inside of Dr. Wallace drove you to say, hey, this is what I want to study. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to advocate for. This is what I want to put out into society. This is what I want to lecture on.
Hey, thanks, Master Fields. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Ted. First and foremost, I want to say that Rondell Tobago is well represented here this afternoon. by Ted and myself. Quite often, Tobago, man. Quite often, Tobago is underrepresented, but we are well represented here this afternoon. So I want to say thank you for that, Master Fields. Yeah. So just as you added, I don't want to put too much emphasis on myself. I've basically spelled out who I am, and it's not all about me, but it's all about trying to do our best for the young men and the young boys throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension the Caribbean. Quite often we're maligned. People say that, ask, where are the men? If you're a man, please stand up and all that. And I want to say that, yeah, we have, as you mentioned before, we quite often see the negatives in the young men and the young boys, but there are many young boys and men, including yourself. You're a pioneer in what you do. Ted is a pioneer in what he do. They are positive young people. They are positive men and boys out here, and we need to bring them to the fore. In terms of what motivated me, I say I was someone who dabbled in quite a bit of things. So at one point in time, I wanted to be one of the premier attorneys in Trinidad and Tobago, and I studied law, became an attorney at law. I wanted to be a historian, so I have a background in history as well, my undergraduate degree in history. Then, when I started seeing the direction of crime in Trinidad and Tobago, I said, Wendell, what can you do to, assist this problem? And that's when I started studying criminology and, conducting research, writing my books, etc. But the main passion is that desire to help not only men and boys, but to help all of Trinidad and Tobago try to reduce and minimize this crime problem. But as you would know, a lot of my research focuses on boys and men. So that's it. That's as much as I can say about Wendell Wallace.
So, I mean, I just spelled it out and outnumbered with Tobagonians here today, right? Which is something that I embrace, something that I enjoy, because I think that we can learn from each other. And it's good. It's good because even though we both coexist in Trinidad and Tobago, we all three do. We go to Tobago, we go to Trinidad, we are one republic. We're realizing that there are some differences. And I mean, it may be coming in from the center to start here, but I mean, since we started Tobagonian, Trinidadian kind of parable already, we need to start looking at the differences. We realize in Trinidad and Tobago, we're seeing a lot more, yes, noting the size difference as well. We're seeing a lot more possibly gang involvement when it comes to young men joining gangs. We've seen a lot more murders. We do take into consideration the sizes of both nations. We've seen a lot more auto crimes, thefts, robberies, these kind of things, use of high-powered weapons and these kind of things. What do you think? What do you think? I want to start with you, Wendell. What do you think, seeing that we are so close, seeing that we are one republic, seeing that we are Trinidad and Tobago, seeing that we have many a similarity as well, what do you think? And I said, taking in consideration the size and maybe the per capita and all the nice logistics that we can take into consideration, why do you think on the Trinidad side you have seen such an onslaught of violence and criminal behavior, or you see an increase, so to speak, over the years in murders, in violent crimes, crimes with high-powered weapons? Is there anything you think to do with the nations themselves? Any differences that may have caused this, in your humble view?
That's a really interesting question, Rondell, right? And one of the areas I want to start looking at is the proliferation of gangs, right? If you look at it per capita, Trinidad has more gangs than Tobago. Trinidad has more hotspot areas as demarcated by the government since 2011.
Right.
So when you find you have these hotspots, automatically you'll find you have more criminal activities in the hotspots, right? And they can spread outwards, as we're seeing in Trinidad. Now, in Tobago, as I mentioned last night in a discussion, there's only one area that is demarcated as a hotspot of crime with the presence of gangs. And in my estimation, I think that's one of the major issues. Now, there are other issues that we can speak to, but you see the per capita gangs that you have, for example, let's say in Port of Spain.
Right.
That, I mean, it's quite possible that a gang member in Port of Spain would bounce up on a rival gang member in the city. That's real. Right? Whereas in Tobago, it is a little bit more difficult because the numbers of gangs, they're not that plentiful, if I may say. So that's just one. I mean, as I said, there are many other reasons, but I just wanted to touch on that particular reason.
Yeah, and I mean, that's an interesting point that you make. And you're free to make your point. Everybody will have a different reasoning as into what they think. But I like the point of the hotspots. There are more hotspots that are gathered here in Trinidad versus those that are gathered in Tobago. And as you were saying, hotspots, I just started to wonder, what turns an area into a hotspot? Where did it begin? How did it begin? Who started it? Is it something that was inherited in that spot? Was it that spot at any point in time? Because I think about Freetown, and I did some history on Freetown. I think that's what they call Belmont now.
Yes.
And the history on Freetown does not leave you with the expectancy that it would be a hotspot today. The thinkers, and these were supposed to be free slaves who were businessmen and business-minded, business-oriented. They were in the capital. They were good businessmen, and it makes you wonder what happens to create or consider a place. Well, we know crime getting there, but what is responsible for that area changing its social face? If you understand where I'm coming from, you could jump in and you could jump in as well. I just piggybacking off the hotspot point that Wendell drew to there.
So I definitely want to hear Wendell with this.
Wendell, like you want to say, all
right. Well, Ted threw that one squarely in my garden, so I have no choice but to answer that, right? Now, an area can be a cold spot, move to a warm spot, and then get to a hot spot. So what you just described there, in fact, that rich history of Freetown, I think that people need to understand that, and they need to read it, and they need to know the history. Because without a history, we are lost. So people need to really understand the history of Belmont and how it was Freetown and was seen as the Mecca. And it's not really what it is today. You're quite correct with that. But just to indicate that an area, so what you mentioned there is that Freetown would have been a cold spot.
Right.
Crime, flourishing businesses, the community, what we call community efficacy, social cohesion, all the nice terms that us academicians like to use. But if you put that in layman term, it was basically a nice area to live with
Correct.
very limited crime. That is the layman description of a cold spot. Now, when you look at Tobago, for example, Tobago is described, or some areas are based on a description of gang typology. Tobago is basically a warm spot.
Right.
We move from cold and we're warming up because we have increased crime, increased gun activities, increased gangs. But we can look at various areas in Trinidad and say that these are hotspots. And how do we get to hotspots, right? So hotspots are not necessarily only areas where you have lots of crime. It could be areas where you have lots of offenders residing as well. So you look at the data and the data will tell you, okay, you have 200 and let's say 100 persons arrested for a firearm offense. And when you look at the address, 95 come from a particular area. So that's one parameter that you use as well. And the other parameter that is used is calls for service. So that you may get, in terms of, we know that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and all police departments, they have hotlines and numbers that you can call. So when you look at the number of calls that you may get, let's say, as you mentioned, the Belmont area. So let's say the amount of calls that you get collectively within a 3-month span in all of the police divisions, and you realize from Belmont, you have the majority of calls come from that area. So it's a whole variety of factors that you can use to deem an area a hotspot. But importantly, what that does, and it's something you pointed to, it changes the community characteristic, right? It changes the community. So that's basically, my response there. The community characteristic actually changes.
Rondell, and just to come in here, I was in Belmont yesterday. I was in Belmont this morning actually.
Yeah.
And there's something that I saw in Belmont that I've never seen before. That you actually had in Belmont, and my cousin that I was staying at was telling me, no, that's where they are now. They are police, the SWAT police or the police in the camo outfit.
Right, yeah.
I can't remember them. They position at the entrance of certain of the roads in Belmont. I've never seen that before. Because we are lamenting that people like Abdullah the butcher that came from the Belmont area, David Rudder, so many of our minds and our great minds came from the Belmont area. We had so many people. In other words, our culture, as we know it, actually was facilitated by Belmont, right? Even my own music career, as it were, right? If you want to call it that, actually was invited me in Belmont with the amount of people that were there, that were into music, into all of those things. That's where I learned almost everything that I know now. So when I went there over the past couple of days and I saw that, you actually have these almost like stormtroopers, guarding the entrance of things. Please. A Belmont that was not the same just a few years ago, and not only that, I just wanted to throw some statistics for the beginning of this year. So for 2024, we had, and I'm sure Dr. Wallace has these information, we had something like about 43 murders in the month of January alone. Which was down, it was actually down because last year, 2003, we had 61 murders. But in Tobago, we had an inordinately high number of murders in January too. So when I looked back at statistics, right, we found that what we are talking about for Trinidad, that would have had 0.003% of its population being killed by murder, right? In Tobago, it's 0.008. So in other words, in Tobago, it's even higher, right? Of course, the numbers are smaller, but per capita, right? It's higher. So even though, as Dr. Wallace was talking about the lesser gangs that we have in terms of numbers, in a place like Tobago, one gang can tip the scale, and really and truly, it will never be one gang. If you really check it out, it would all, because there's no point if you really understand the dynamics of gangs, there's almost no point of a gang being able to sustain its character without a rival gang.
True.
Yeah.
And what I gleaned from what you said, and I think it's really interesting to point out. I like the fact Dr. Wallace has spoke to the history and possibly the distancing yourself from the knowledge of the history can impact the society along the journey.
Yes.
The Freetown motto, the Freetown story, the value of it. Some persons who possibly were good with businessmen and shop owners as well. Those men that had that entrepreneurial spirit. Then Ted mentioned, I think David Rudder. He just mentioned. He mentioned another person. I can't remember who it was. Who was the other person he mentioned?
The famous wrestler.
Or the wrestler as well. You understand?
Yeah.
A distancing possibly from the greatness that came from the origin of the tongue as well. Maybe that as well contributes to the transformation of the behavior on the ground as well, as you say. And if you say, Dr. Wallace, if you say, Wendell, that sometimes it's where most people who possibly are offenders or charged on offenses, even if they're out on bail, possibly, and we know, I would say, in our penal system, you go in, it's not really a place where you may find the best rehabilitation or reformation. So these same guys who've been exposed to more criminal minds in the system, now coming back into one place after that. Some young boys, and I sometimes hear it in the songs they sing. I went into YTC because of XYZ. And in many of the songs that they sing, they always speak on something that hurt them. Either my brother get shot, my mother get killed, I had a baby and the baby died, and I do this and I went to YTC and then I come back out. So coming back out broken in pieces emotionally and then being negatively influenced, and then, as you say, gathering together, no proper mentorship or no redirection having taken place in the place where they went, where we think would be reformative. It's really possibly sending them back out in the society and heating up the spot as well.
Correct.
Right. And another point I took from what that it kind of, because Ted is about what, Ted old is now about 32. Right? And for Ted to be a Tobagonian, because this is what I'm studying now on the mind. I don't even want to use words like psyche. I want to keep it really, man.
Yes.
The mind of children. Because Ted was surprised to go in Belmont and see the guys possibly in the SSA gear with the machine guns. And his mind, he may, as a big man, had a level of anxiety while being there. Not saying he may have been fearful. He might have been frightened too. But at the end of the day, a level of anxiety that a 5-year-old or 6-year-old child who was born there, seeing that, doesn't have.
Correct.
That's right.
That was amazing to me.
Yeah.
Although maybe the time that these 5-year-olds are growing up into, and
they are not going to be anywhere near as impacted traumatically as we may be, because that's not what we are accustomed to, right? And then one of the things that we also, I don't know if you all remember something. You all remember when Playway and Lotto was new? In other words, before Playway and Lotto came out on NLC board or whatever, the only thing we had was something called national lotteries. And so everybody kind of grew up thinking, okay, well, gambling is there's a stigma to gambling and that kind of thing. Our young people don't have that stigma. It's a totally different world. It's a totally different value system. So they may not be as traumatized overtly as we might be. They may be, however, suffering some overt trauma, some internal trauma that would be much more difficult to diagnose perhaps But definitely that's one of the things. The other thing that guys we have to really always bring to the table here is that the vast majority of the victims of these crimes, and that's just to go back to topic in a sense, are our men and boys.
Well,
Right?
not only victims,
Our
perpetrators too.
girls,
Perpetrators too.
Perpetrators too, yeah. You're
Correct.
saying it's not only the men and boys victims, the majority of victims, but they're the majority perpetrators as well.
Correct. And that's amazing to think. It speaks to something that sounds like a cannibalism. You understand? Of a species, of a type, I'm not saying that you're supposed to cannibalize on others, but I mean, you would think that there would be a level of understanding, and you would want to know why it's happening. You are the greatest victim, you are the greatest perpetrator.
Perpetrator as well, yes.
As well. You understand? And I mean, I take the point from Ted there for sure. And as we spoke about the psyche of the 5-year-old, 6-year-old seeing those guns as normal, seeing certain things that some adult males may have never seen, and being quite comfortable and growing very comfortable in the environment. Now, the reason I'm having this discussion, because most times, brothers, when you see we talking about crime, or you hear at least our leaders speak about crime and those who want to vie to be the crime solvers and those with the solution, it's always strategic to deal with the current criminal element alone, which I understand the significance and the value. But I think there's always a wanting and a need to address the development of the criminal mind. And that is why I am glad we started the discussion in such a way, where we started talking about, hey, what is a hotspot? How did hotspots become a thing? If a spot was cold, how did it get hot? And if the spot is now hot and we have the heat inside of there that we have to bring in resources to cool it down,
Yeah.
how does it impact the mind of the younger ones there?
Yeah.
Because it is the environment that is culturing and developing that mind as into how it should progress. And then you would see the daily interactions between the police and it's amazing to look at. You take the same 10-year-old from one area and another area and ask them about the police the interaction with the police. So what they think about the police. And they may have two different types.
Totally different.
What do you say about that, Rondell?
Hey, Rondell, let me tell you something, right? Two things I want to add here. When you look at, Ted spoke about being, probably traumatized at seeing that level of policing, right?
Right.
And rightfully, he mentioned that you have some 5-year-olds in those areas who will not be traumatized and see that as normal. Now, one of the things I've been seeing on social media and in the mainstream media, look at whenever you have any protest action or shooting and people are confronting the police, etc. Don't you see little boys or even little children to the forefront? So by the time they are teenagers, they are adolescents, that level of trauma, they don't have that again, right? They don't, they lack that level. They cannot be traumatized. Now, I also want to share a particular story with you and with the audience. I'm not going to call any names because I don't want to stigmatize any communities, right?
Good.
But in a particular community, the mother, and unfortunately a single mother, right, was telling me that she moved out of that community into one of the so-called safer communities, right? Because of the whole gang violence and crime. And she really wanted a better life for her young son. And she saw what was happening with young men who are being recruited into gangs, who dropped out of school because they've been influenced negatively, etc. And sometimes you need to take those drastic steps. Now, I know that not all persons can move from particular communities into other communities. You might be a single mother, you don't have the financial wherewithal, but she took a career-changing and a life-changing change just for her son. And she said that one night, she heard a loud bang. Now, sometimes when vehicles backfire it could give you the sound of a gunshot.
The
And
muffler.
she said, what amazed her is as soon as that 8-year-old heard that song, you know what he did? That 8-year-old boy, when he heard that loud noise similar to a gunshot, he ran and hid under bed.
Duck and cover.
Right? So these are the realities that we face. I mean, yeah, young girls, they face the same situations.
Correct.
But you know, I just wanted to digress a bit to show. I just wanted to change the dynamics to show that sometimes people have to take drastic steps in order to protect the future generation. And all of us may not be able to do it. Sometimes we just can't do it. But you know, I want to applaud that person if she's listening. She knows who she is. If she's listening, for taking that step to, you know, ensure the safety, the future of a young son.
And just to add to that, another suggestion as well, as you gave that tip, there are always, and I'm not going to say always, but at least for those communities that are struggling with these issues, that have positive, influential groups, I always encourage particularly single mothers, because for some reason, I mean, and even statistically, so we realize that when single mothers raising boys particularly have some challenges, particularly when they're going through adolescence, when the testosterone gets up, when I always encourage them to join them in groups like these. Just as I mentioned, that's Youth Empowerment, the Police Youth Club, the Pathfinders, you have the cadets, all these cadets. Join them where they're going to get male positive influence. So even though you're in the community, get them to places where they go within the community that are positively influenced, and even outside of the community if you have to, for them to be positively influenced by young men, by other men older than them. Give them mentors to look up to. Don't ever think to yourself you can do it by yourself. Young boys particularly, and this is why I'm speaking to single mothers, young boys particularly at a certain age, and a single mother raised me, so I can tell you, and she was a stellar parent, very good role model. I could have lived, I could have been woman taught by her, because her life was what she preached. However, at a certain age, a boy believes he is his mother's provider, his protector, co-protector, co-supplier, co-everything, when he's reached attained a certain age, if she has nobody else to do it for her.
Correct.
So sometimes, and I've interfaced with young men, and I'll give you one experience just as you have given one. There was a young man that was so positively influenced, and I think it's highly because his mother and father were very good when it came to co-parenting. The mother understood the value of the father understood the value of the mother. However, he prioritized staying with the father. And I had to ask him why. I said, because his mother, daddy, they don't have like rips and fights, no court order and these kind of things. And he said, sir, when I'm with my mother, I feel like I am the man and I have to protect her. But when I am with my father, I feel like I can be a child. And this boy was like about 16 going on 17. And it showed me the sense of security that even young boys feel in the presence of good men.
Correct.
So it is critical. And I say that for fathers now. We just spoke to mothers. Do what you must to give your children that feeling of security, even if you all are in a separated relationship. And mothers, even if you and the father are separated, understand the value. Based on that experience I just gave you, you might see the young boy and you go play macho for your mother. We all did. Because you want her to feel you're big and you're strong, and she come, don't baby man, he's a big man now. But in the presence of the father, there's still that respect, there's still that revere for his position, and there's still the opportunity. It gives the child the opportunity to feel like a child, to know that if a bandit come in the house, he don't have to face that bandit by himself. You understand? Daddy there. So it's a sense of security, and I would expect young girls feel it too. I'm pretty sure young girls would feel that as well, knowing daddy is there, or daddy is close, or daddy, even if daddy is just a phone call away, so that there's a greater sense of security in the home.
Rondell,
that stabilizes the mind.
I know your father died earlier this year, or was it late last year?
late last year.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
I remember when my father died. Wendell, I think your dad is still alive.
Yeah, 84 and kicking.
Right. Listen to me. Listen to me. One of the most terrible feelings of loneliness, even as a big man,
Mm.
is when your father dies, you automatically feel exposed. You feel exposed. You feel like, listen, even if you were not living under his roof, even if once the father goes, you feel exposed. And I'm saying, what about these children who their fathers aren't physically dead per se, but the conditions make their fathers dead to them? How exposed these young people feel, how frustrated, how, you see, the thing is, how men have always operated, boys. And that's part of the reason why the gang culture is going to be so attractive to boys in the main. And I'm not saying they're not attractive to girls too, but the boys in the main is that for boys to, and for men, for adulthood to happen, men must find somebody to mimic. Men must find their response action, and their response nature is one that says that this is what I must do to become accepted into that which I want to become, which is manhood. In the East, it's much easier because in the East, there are things like rites of passage. There are, where the entire society, at the end of your graduation into whatever is a particular rite of passage for culture, the society now recognizes you as a man.
It's a man.
Exactly. In our Western world, what you found happening here is that our boys are told we are men by what we should not do. So you find that, for example, if a boy cries, then they say big men don't cry.
Big man don't cry.
Big man don't cry. Or whatever it is, it's a reflection. So you find boys in mono-ed schools, for example, doing better than boys in co-ed schools, simply again because when boys are growing up and it's a testosterone, they don't want it is terrible for them to feel wrong or be wrong. You're doing a maths problem. I remember when I was in high school, and yes, Wendell, we went to grade high schools, we went to grade secondary. But we wouldn't call
You was a little miserable one, Rondell. You was a little miserable one in school.
But I remember once I had really liked Spanish, but I never did Spanish past third form, simply because there was a time the Spanish teacher at the time had insulted me so bad when I made a mistake. Habla, habla, habla. And when I said that man said something to me that I was so ashamed when all the girls started laughing. I said,
no Spanish.
No, you understand? The only thing I know now about Spanish is that Elton John song. The word in Spanish, I don't understand. That's the only thing. In Spanish. And it was again due to the fact that if it were a mono-ed school, for example, the reaction or the pain or the embarrassment may have been
lessened.
Would have been definitely lessened. And of course, I don't know because I did the science subjects anyway, so I don't know where Spanish would have fit in anyways. But that is basically my part of the story. So you find that young men, we have to look at them. We have to really create environment that builds them. And we also have to also interact and be very cautious at a particular time about their interaction with girls. And I know this may sound very, very, very bad in a westernized society that we believe that everything that we're doing for boys, then girls must do the same thing. And I am just saying, but I have two daughters, but I'm telling you, the people that perpetrate that are not fully cognizant of what that does to the psyche of a teenage boy. Right?
True.
And that's why the result to becoming the class clowns, and the result to being the cool guy on the block and that kind of thing, and doing outrageous things. Because the attention that they should be really getting, which is the attention within the context of a schoolroom, they no longer feel that they can excel in that. So they have to find other avenues, less or more egregious avenues to seek attention. So all of these things we have to contend with and have to know, really realize as part of the whole culture of boyhood, growing into manhood. That boys to men concept has to be seriously looked at.
For real, and I like that. I like how you incorporated that whole rites of passage. So you see, I like where the discussion going. As I say, we talking about the mind. We talking about things that the emotions that could impact the decisions made by the mind as well. Because that's critical and that's important. And I would tell you, when you listen to some of these songs, these violent songs, in between there, if you listen to some of their words, many of the singers who are most time the writers of their own music tell stories of times when they've been hurt. As I said, times when good ones have, or loved ones to them have died, brothers or friends, or even the gang leader who they thought was their father who abandoned them, they was hurt. And you would hear even in the song, a particular one, I was listening to the words this morning, talk about the pain that he feel he had to beat it with bullets. You understand? And that song is one of the most popular songs, meaning I have to relieve the stress by blazing bullets on somebody else. And when you think about it, we're talking about men, the way we've been cultured, the way it's been socialized, the way it's been promoted, not only by other men, by some women too, because if you're too emotional, you have videos coming up about you like a woman, if you mention. So a man is in a conundrum. Be emotional or don't be emotional. Who is a masculine man? I don't know who invented the term masculine man. Most times when I hear it spoken, is a woman talking about a masculine man who's never experienced manhood at any point in time. So my point is, if we haven't taught these same young fellas who in the same communities who may have an overwhelming number of persons who haven't been rehabilitated well, who sometimes growing in a home with social issues, the younger ones who looking up to the ones who came out from these institutions, who themselves haven't been recultured when they went there, possibly coming back out even worse. Worse. We haven't taught them how to heal, how to forgive, how to move forward, how to negotiate, how to discuss, how to relate, how to be in any type of relationship between man and man. We focus on man and woman, but we haven't taught young boys to relate from man to man, boy to boy.
Correct. Yep.
We haven't taught them that. We haven't focused on the value of being able to talk things out, of being able to negotiate, being able to appreciate mediation. And when these young boys who don't know how to mediate, don't know how to negotiate, don't know how to cry, don't know how to heal, what you want them to do? The only thing they could think about is vengeance.
Rondell, that's a really important point you made there, right? And I'll share something with you. It's something I think I've mentioned before. Two things. I'm working on something now called the pressure cooker effect, right? Where our mouths are supposed to be that vent in the pressure cooker. And because we seal it, quite often that pressure builds up inside and we explode like a pressure cooker. And we tend to hurt the people who are closest to us, right? Now, one of the research or part of my lecturing, part of my teaching is teaching domestic violence, right?
Right.
It's a course that I actually hate to teach, but I must teach it as part of the course because you have more literature on women as victims than men as victims, right? So in one of my classrooms, I was speaking about women when they hurt, how they go about dealing with the hurt.
Right.
Listen to women when they hurt and they call a girlfriend and then they phone for the hour or two and they're talking and they're sharing and they're venting and they're crying.
Correct.
Let it be a situation where Wendell Wallace comes home and meets his wife in a compromising position. I am afraid to tell Rondell, I'm afraid to tell Ted, because I feel that they can look at me as less than a man.
Correct.
Maybe a lot for sure.
One of the questions I asked in the class, I asked, okay, so young men, how many of you think it's okay to cry? And out of approximately 20 men, 20 young boys in the class, only about 2 or 3 felt comfortable to cry. You asked the women, the young girls in the class, and it was the flip side. So here the interesting thing they asked me now, sir, what about you? You feel it's okay to cry? Have you ever cried? And I shared a story with them, Rondell. No, I did law. I didn't do law through the University of the West Indies, right? I did it as a private candidate through my partner, Quebec, as an associate.
Right.
I did the graduate route where in first year, I did 4 courses, and in my final year, I did 5 courses.
Right.
But because I felt that I was such an intelligent person, in the first year, I passed my 4 courses with flying colors because I already had an undergraduate degree.
Right.
In the final year, I adopted the same approach now, and I could pass that. And for people who know the English marking system, the English doesn't give you any free mark. So for 4 of the 5 courses, I passed them with flying colors. And for 1 course, I got 26. 26. Right? So you know, for Rondell, you would know that means you had to do for all 5 courses, right?
Yeah, correct.
I sat in my office at the point in time, and I put my head down on a desk, and I properly cried.
Yeah, I understand.
No, I wasn't really crying much because I was hurt. But 75% of those tears was because I had to pay monies in pounds to do the exam. And the next 25 was genuine hurt. You know, the females in that class, you know what the question was? Sir, big man like you?
You see?
A big man like you cry?
Yeah, you see? Exactly. So that's what I tell you. Socially, even women have been socialized that men should show no emotion.
Emotions, yeah.
No, listen to this. And I've said this before. So Trinidad and Tobago, I wanted to throw a perspective in.
Before you go, Ted, we want Trinidad and Tobago, if you're listening, I know we talking. I think we are the top of the hour here now, 5, we ending at 6. If you want to call in, if you want to give your views, if you want to bring your perspective in, we welcome that. That is what the discussion is about. Remember the topic, men, boys, and crime. We have it wide open. We coming from any angle, any perspective. If you're a man, if you're a woman, give your and you want to give your perspective, I think you could call in and give that perspective. I think the Brother McIntyre, the number was 222-8255. That number again, 222-8255. Go ahead, Dr. Jones.
Yes, so actually, yes. So I was actually going to bring up this whole concept of men crying. And for the men listening here, I do not want, sometimes women use crying multiplicity. And it means that it does help to reduce your stress. And for that reason, men must also cry. The other reason that some people can use crying is pretty much as a weapon or as an indication that I'm hurt. I want to admonish our men listening that use crying. Sorry, not crime. We're not going to be using crime at all. We are going to use crying as your form of self-release. The reason is that I think that crying and men crying is also part of the romanticism, right? That women feel that men are sensitive if they cry, and a man must cry, and then at the same time when you cry, as in Dr. Wallace's case, then they tell you what you're crying for.
We're crying for.
Right? Let me give Trinidad and Tobago an idea here. Men, when you're crying, cry only in front of he or she who can receive those tears and honor you. Right?
Understood.
And primarily, what I'm trying to say is cry before your God. Fundamentally, as men, we do not have the liberty to cry a weapon. Right? Let me give you a good example. I am the father of two girls and one wife. And from time to time, because of where we live here in Tobago, we will see a snake. And now I just want Trinidad and Tobago to know I am not fond of snakes myself.
Makes two of us.
But those girls under my household are terrified of snakes. So if a snake comes into the house, there is no other option. It is unsung from the youngest to the eldest that I must deal with that snake. No, it is, I wish that I could be on top of the bed screaming just like them. But I do not have that option, guys.
True.
I have to be in a position where I have to activate and do what is necessary to deal with that snake. Right? Now, I'm saying that to say that within the ambit of our fears and our shortcomings and our hurts and our insecurities, this is where men must find themselves in good company so that hurt, so that fear, so that all of those other things can in fact be registered under the right safe authority. Other than that, you will find boys and men growing up where their vulnerabilities have become weaponized against them.
True. I totally agree with you there, Ted.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to say for sure.
You see, and as I continue to say, this is how you will get to the solution of dealing with crime. Because I believe to solve crime, you must put a wedge into the development of the criminal mind. You need to look at where is the best placed, the best environment. Just like we know molders grow in our environment, you need to examine the environment where it thrives most. You need to look at the conditions that it thrives worst, and to eliminate or remove, at least lessen or decrease it, you need to put the measures in place that you have to destroy the environment or to redirect the development of that particular type of mind. I often say that there is no ward in Tobago, no ward in Trinidad, and any hospital that criminal children are born. So that as they're born, they're automatically going to be a criminal. It is the environment, it is the things they are exposed to, and I often say also the things that we as parents fail to expose them to as well. And if we start taking... Go ahead.
No, I think Dr. Wallace was trying to get back on.
Yeah, Dr. Mark. Dr. Wallace trying to get back on. So, as I was saying, Ted, for us to truly say that we have been launching an attack on crime, it is my humble view that we must attack the development of the criminal mind of the next generation. Yes, we must restrain the current elements that are here, the criminal elements, because they can impact the younger ones and foster even more the development of the criminal mind. So yes, we have to do things. The ones that can be reformed, you reform them. The ones who cannot be reformed, I don't know, you restrain them or at least separate them from the younger ones. But the end game cannot solely be buying, and possibly we could now weigh in now to the state's approach if we're thinking that they're having the best approach, if it's always that strategic approach, which only involves operation. We know operation is important when it comes to detection, but then is the state taking the relevant approach that we are suggesting? eradication of these environments and these areas, not the areas for people that think I'm talking about the area, but the things that turn cool spots into hot spots, the emotions that we are exploring right now, that we're seeing in the greatest perpetrator of crime and greatest victim of crime that we are leaving unaddressed, the social issues possibly that males face, like 94% of the homeless in Port of Spain being males, no few shelters, if any, for men, and they are the highest number of homeless in our society. When we look at men who are mentally impacted and committing suicide, 80% of the suicide victims for the last few years, almost a decade now, have been male, with a great percentage of them coming out from our national security services as well. Are we dealing with these things that can be contributant to men perpetrating crimes generally, or to young boys feeling that they will feel covered by joining gangs because of the mental state or the emotional state or their failure to progress in an academic educational system where we do see vocational learning as possibly sensible or worthy enough form of education to put it on a pedestal. So I am hoping from the discussion that we are realizing how broad-ended it is, and the fact that we must also focus on dealing with the criminal mind, while, as I say, we restrain and rehabilitate the criminal element of this time. Thoughts, Wendell?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I got bounced off for a bit, but based on what I've gathered thus far, it's really important that we rehabilitate these individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quite often, and not only rehabilitate, but you use a term that I really like. We need to rehabilitate, and if we can't rehabilitate, let's separate, right? Because the fact is, when these individuals return from prison, and we hope that prison has that reformative and transformative effect, sometimes it doesn't work, right?
Mm.
But when you place those individuals back into the same social area, the same community,
Right.
some of them who really want to change, when you go back into that same environment, you fall back into the same situation.
True.
And then those who are hell-bent on not being changed, when they go back into this community, sometimes they go back a bit worse than they went in. And now they're looking for recruits, right?
That's right.
And that in itself can foster the continuation of young men and young boys being turned over into this whole crime syndrome. And one of the things that I really like that you've spoken about before, Rondell, and Ted touched on it before, when you all were in Grenada, you touched on it. You see that male empowerment?
Yeah.
People underestimate what you said. I am still trying to really put together and conceptualize and really understand that deep concept that you spoke about, empowerment of males. Because if we really empower our young males, and some people think that empowerment is academic qualifications or sports. When you empower someone and you give them a skill for life, empowerment could be Ted is empowered.
Correct.
So empowerment could be business. Rondell, you are empowered. It could be your plus your academic. I am empowered. It could be academic. It could be so many other things. There are so many fields that we can empower our youths. And something I said last night in a webinar that I was invited to. Have you ever invited anyone to tile your house? The cost of tiling my present residence is probably about quarter the cost of the house.
Correct.
So there are wide areas. And I also want to shout out to a former national footballer, Otis Whitley, who at one point in time he came to the University of the West Indies and he shared his experience of being a sportsman and, you know, using particular means to keep away from crime, putting some vehicles on the road, etc. And a friend of mine who was an attorney of law and who grew up in a particular, probably a sheltered life, you know, she was like, so what is so successful about that? But this is a young man who could have gone the other direction had he not done particular thing. So we need to stop boxing people into particular categories and thinking that, okay, the only success that a young man can have in life is if he's a lawyer, if he's a doctor.
Right.
I appreciate the academic work, because trust me, I don't think I could really, you know, it might be good to say, but this is me, this is who I am.
True.
Right? But we have a space for everybody. We have a space for every young man, so that they do not have to turn to a life of gang and crime.
And I totally agree with you. And that is something that I continue to lament on. And I see it's part of changing the culture too.
Mm-hmm.
We change that culture of a tileman. And you see, we've done it from the inception, the culture and the education system.
Yes.
You do poorly in an exam, your teacher tell you, you don't pass this exam, you will say you're going to be mixing mortar for the rest of your life. But every building we live in is somebody mix mortar.
Mix mortar.
Somebody plaster the wall, somebody lay the blocks. That is sometimes a gift that they have. And some people have it with academics and it push them even further. But it is a gift many times that people have, as they say, laying tiles. I saw a video of a man, a Jamaican man, I liked, and a young boy that looked like the age of 10, laying tile in his entire house with for his father, apparently. So I said to myself then, this young boy could never suffer because he already has a skill.
Exactly.
You cannot even misdirect him possibly to get involved in crime because he could start working even at the young age that he is.
Correct.
If he doesn't do well academically, 15, 16, he has a trade to take care of himself. He don't need to sit on a block.
Correct.
And not only he has the trade, he will have self-pride and confidence. And those are some of the things you're talking about. I did that when he finished tiling that floor. I could only imagine the feeling of confidence and pride that I did it. And those are the things that develop a good, sound, positive mind. I was coming along in the car with my son today, and I was telling him, I said, son, one of the things you need to learn is to drive every type of heavy machinery. I said, I never see a truck man without a work yet. And that is the reality. So it means you could go to school for your whole life, possibly, and not achieve what you want to become. And possibly thereafter be forced in a position to learn to drive a truck for 3 years. And that take care of you for the rest of your life. Driving a 40-foot trailer, operating a crane, or doing all these things that is selected you do. And the thing is, we don't promote or put these things out. And that is why I continue to say, until we start doing that, and I think part of the problem why many young men get involved, and even young people, we could broaden it, get involved. The young men, so because they are the young ones with testosterone, and they're viewed as small soldiers everywhere in the world. Some of them fighting real wars too. Is because we glorify the academic road, so that when they feel if I fail academics and I done said, I could only turn on the block and I could only wait for the pusherman because I can't do anything else. Because we've wasted that time, I think, which is a very important time in a young man's life, which is from 12 to 16, where we could fill him with a skill that regardless whatever may happen at the CXD or happen at wherever else, he can provide for himself. He doesn't have to wait to be employed, Ted. He doesn't have to get a degree to find employment, but his hands could feed him. There's so many skills, plumbing, electrical, but the reason people don't involve themselves, young boys and even parents, deter their children from becoming involved in those things, because there's a social perception that if you learn the skill, is a done see it. While some of these men some of them are the wealthiest, And the ones that are not wealthy lack one thing. They have skill, but we haven't put financial management skill,
Yeah.
business development
That's
skill
right.
into their minds. And that
Correct.
is why I think a worthy solution to some of the issues we have is to bring back my part, which was the vocational side of the MyLad program, and reduce the catchment age, Dr. Wallace and Ted, to 12 to 13 years. Because
No,
they
listen to
have
me.
it at 16, but you need to be real that at 16, I know we were looking at some statistic the other day when we were talking about crime, and we
Yes.
saw for the last 2 years that up to 69 of the murders, there were young men between 16 and 19 charged for them.
Correct.
So
That's
if
right.
between 16 to 19 they could start murdering, it means the gang and the gang life has had them since they were 10 and 11.
Correct. It didn't just happen overnight when they reached 16.
Correct. So we cannot look to put a intervention at 16 when they reach the age where many of them are their age or their peers killing already. We
And
need
a
to
lot of
give
them
them
are
a
also
pass from
dropping
a
out
lot of
from
ways.
school before 16. A lot of them drop out of school before 16. So you're quite correct. Let's catch them, as you said, from as young as 12.
Correct. Working in those communities as well, brothers. You would see from 10, 11, they may not be on the block yet because they're being tested.
That's right.
But they walkie-talkie, man. Police coming in here, they know code, they know to clap pigeon, they know all them things already. So if they could learn that gang culture so much that they could put them in a room and interrogate them and not get information out of a 10-year-old child. If you use that same mind constructively and put constructive education in the mind, not only academic, because I view education as purposeful learning, whether if it's
Exactly.
tiling, whether if it's any vocational skill, culinary skill, hairdressing, I am sure by the age of 16, we'll have a lot of productive youth or more productive youth in our society.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, let me ask you guys
Sorry,
a question, gentlemen. Let me interject and ask a question. In the instance
So,
where there's a single mother, all right, a single mother who probably is unable to work or is not working, underemployed or unemployed, and she has a bunch of boys, right? So let's say she has 4 boys, and she tries her best to send them to school. There might be people in the community like myself who would
Mhm.
try to encourage and to put into their minds that you have to think positive and keep on the straight road. How do you maintain that kind of inspiration or motivation when within the household it's
Mm.
difficult to survive? You know, I mean, it's
uh,
difficult to put food on the table. It's difficult to buy new clothing. How you guys would relate to that? Or
okay,
Mhm.
brother Mark, let me jump in here, and I'm jumping in here because usually this is where this is part of what I think we do on a consistent basis for those young boys that are at the school level who have parents in this particular, especially mothers in this particular case. First and foremost, we need to talk to the mothers and really bring to them the importance of male role models that she can find, right? Now, that may sound very pie in the skyish, but let's face it. If you go to a mosque or you go to a church or you go to somewhere, there is particular one of the places it is the concentration of
Mm.
male role models may be a little bit easier there, right? That let's say on the block or on the street. That's one. There may in fact be activities like, for example, if the mother is working, right, and she's a good worker, for example, it's very easy perhaps, and I've seen women do this, talk to their bosses about, helping my son. My son is getting into 13 now. I would like you to work with him a little, maybe come in the store a little, and, just to help him build discipline. Another aspect is, and this is very important to our women out there because I hear it all the time. Too many of us bad talk our children's teachers in front of them, right?
Mm.
And what it builds, it builds disrespect for authority. You know, mommy, and most women, if you all are listening, tell me if this ever happened to you. Mommy, we have to bring money again for book fair, or we have to bring money for something. And your response, them teachers, you know, whatever you again.
Again.
Again, those type of statements are actually derogatory, and they are actually the part of the fabric of a young children's um, character going forward. So one of the things is definitely role models. I've seen women who know how to operate, but then they themselves have to also be an example of what a woman is. Because I will tell you this, boys tend to marry their mothers. So you now also as a woman, you have to be a good example. You can't be a customer. Because if you're a customer, they're going to be customer. Right? So you have to really be able to wound that. There are several other aspects. But I will tell you that if you are the one in care of the son, then ultimately it is you to find the resources to bring manhood out of them. Knowing that as a woman, and Trinidad and Tobago, as a woman, you cannot bring manhood out of a boy. Right? Well, so you need to find that. Yeah.
I support Ted entirely with that. That first of all, I mean, with the mention of you being that first exemplar, even though you may not be male, you're still an exemplar of what an adult should look like. Because I had a single mother too. She was an immigrant from Grenada as well. She had boys as well. She didn't have girls, but she was a good exemplar. She was respectful. I didn't see her in any curse out. I couldn't do what Ted say, come home and tell her anything about the teacher, because I might get more licks for talking disrespectfully as well. She had respect. Right. She instilled moral value in us. And the things that she couldn't do because of her gender being different to us, she outsourced. The pastors in the church, she had us in Pathfinders in the church, had us in Adventist youth in the church. Anything she could have done to get us that male mentorship was important. And another thing to add to that point with the Ted and to answer Brother Mac is the village needs to return to what the village was. Because mothers at that point in time, and even fathers who saw other mothers struggling, who saw other mothers who sometimes weren't the best influence on their children because of whatever hardships they faced, or because of whatever shortcomings they had, plenty times stepped in like the village mother and brought the children home by them, carried the children to church with them, provided for them when they're hungry, give them food, give them little small jobs sometimes. And I think that in our community is now lacking. It's nowhere. Maybe in Tobago, it's there still a lot more than it is in Trinidad. I can't say Ted and Rondell could may speak on that. But in Trinidad, where you know everybody is auntie, everybody is uncle, auntie down the road could discipline you if she see you doing something wrong, and mommy wouldn't come up in the night to fight her after. A child knew that everybody older than them, they were to respect
them. Yeah.
But now we don't have that. For some reason, our generation of parents have dropped the ball, and we have to admit it. I saw a young man come by an eatery place, young boy, about 11 or 12, and said good morning to everyone. About 10 adults there. I was the only person answered.
Yeah.
But then we would say, boy, you know, long I hear a young boy say good afternoon, and our next occasion. So we have dropped the ball, and we have to revisit. We have to do things in our communities that will now revitalize that community spirit. I know I see some communities doing it by forming some of these community-based organizations, so that when some parents who work in 2 and 3 jobs, they could, and the children go home by themselves, because we know it have that they could go at least to the homework center that they created. They could go to the space. They have football or basketball or some positive alternative for them to participate in. Those are the ways we have to do that. But then ultimately, it goes back to what Ted says. The parent in the home, I don't care if it's a single mother or it's a single father. As a parent, you have a duty to your children. because you brought them here.
Yeah, you gotta
You have a
provide.
duty not just to provide financial stability in their life, but moral, ethical, and all the other things that they need. So if you know it lacking in you or you struggling yourself, don't be ashamed to ask for help. But the problem that we have sometimes, Dr. Wallace, the people that sometimes need the help are the ones that are most abrasive and the ones that are most combative because they believe you're trying to belittle them and attack them.
Yeah, to add to Brother Mark's question, and I mean, there is nothing that I can say that's different from you, Rondell, or from Ted.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I can only add one simple line that we can't forget that yes, poverty or destitution contributes to criminality, but we cannot use it as a justification.
Agree.
It is never a justification. I didn't come from a rich family, and I know many persons who are what we may call legally poor, but will never commit a crime.
Well said again.
That's right.
Well said again.
So
then
we
let me
as
take some
parents,
then.
yeah, just one quick comment here, Ted. We as
Yeah.
parents, and we all parents here, Rondell is a parent, Ted, you're a parent, I'm a parent. You know what Rondell said about parenting is so important. We can't afford to drop the ball. It is our responsibility to our children.
True.
We have
Yeah.
to ensure that all the ethical, moral, spiritual, and all the other R's that they are met in those children's lives. So yeah, I am in sync with you guys.
And Dr. Wendell, listen, not only our children, we really realize because of the deficit out there, that we also have to reach out to other children in the maybe the best ways possible, in the maybe the most effective way possible. And be also mindful that there are almost so many laws that are actually, I guess, in the view to protect children, that could actually be harming them because you really can't get the intervention needed. Sometimes I see what happens in our society, and maybe you guys could tell me, and the listeners could maybe tell. And then remember, you want to call in 222-8255. And the hotmail, the other hotmail number, I guess Mark will give us again. I only remember this one. But we'd love for people to call in. But also this, that where we sit, we have to reach out to other people. I mean, it's unfortunate that that's where it is. We have to find the most clever way. We may have to form maybe classes, and have a place where it's structured so that we can go. For example, I remember when I just left UE, Dr. Wendell and Rondell, I used to teach mathematics. And what was trained, and I became very, very successful at it. Well, at least I was successful at teaching it. It wasn't a good career move because for some reason I was maybe too nice, nobody used to really pay. But the point I'm making is that we had a very successful class that was growing very, very well. And one of the things that I remember everybody used to say is maths hard. That's why they can't solve it. It's hard. Mathematics is hard. And there may be plenty of people in Trinidad and Tobago now that would have testified to their own saying at some point in time that maths hard. Mathematics hard. And I had to first and foremost to make them success in mathematics. I first had to change that mindset.
Mindset, yes.
Right. What I used to say is this: listen, you see that wall, that brick wall, that is hard. Mathematics is not like the brick wall. Mathematics might be difficult, but it is not hard. You see, when I started changing it, people can see something as difficult, like they can work it out. But if you see something as hard, then it's impervious. You can't get it. So when they started doing it, and then I started saying, listen, you know what mathematics is really designed to do? Mathematics is, in fact, a problem, a subject designed to solve problems. It is in itself is not a problem. It is designed to solve problems. And once it started having that mindset, then the approach to mathematics became different. And very large number of my students became, after repetitive years of failing mathematics, became very successful at math. Just from the mindset, of course, it had to do with the excellent teaching and all of that, but we're not going to move. No. No, I just want to throw this in. With that mindset for mathematics, we need to have that mindset for life, brother.
Agreed.
What is it that we tell ourselves about our communities? What about it? What about the things we tell ourselves about poor people? And what they say about ghetto people? You know, we like those kind of talks that ghetto people are this and we can't get this. Within the ghetto, there are people in UE right now. Right? Within the ghetto, there are people who, the same better area, has provided so many politicians, so many pilots,
if not,
so many different things, right? The same place that we call our hotspot in Tobago has produced some of the best preachers, right? So the thing is that we can't find a workaround in terms of the mindset, and even for the rest of the program, right? One of the things that guys we could do is that I really want us to even consider how is it from our experience we change these mindsets.
Okay, we have a call on the line here, gentlemen. Good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon to the panel, and good afternoon, Dr. Wallace. I am calling to just give a little 2 cents on the discourse. And I want to go back to the aspect of vocational versus academic. And this is something that I garnered from a study done on what we consider to be the first world countries. And they spoke about introducing the vocational track from as early as the third form. So what this does is it gives you that option of choice. And it's not seen as we say in our parlance, a dancey head, route. It's seen as equally as important as the academic. Added to that, what they have also done is they have co-opted the corporate bodies, the corporate society that need tradesmen, so in their industries, to partner with the municipal school system, and that in itself provides an opportunity. So when you go into that track, it's not just you getting the qualification and going out into the big wide world to fight up, as they say. You go along a track that takes you into an internship and possibly into a job later on. So it's bona fide, and it's done from as early as we spoke about the aspect of the boys being arrested or charged 16 to 19. We're looking at introducing that track earlier, as you said. True. Agreement with that. It's earlier. So we're going to put that in the system, but that has to be done from the education aspect, from the ministry's aspect. We have to consider newness. Not because we've done something for 50 years means we have to continue doing it that way. And I don't want to monopolize the program, and I want to touch on the single motherhood because I'm part of an organization, Anointed Sons International, and what we've recognized is that need for that male role model. But what we're taught as women, me having been a single mother myself, is that we could do it. We could do it. Don't worry, you don't need no man to do this thing. You could do it. And that has poisoned our society in terms of how we raise our boys. Because I couldn't teach my son how to be a man. No woman can teach a boy to be a man. You can show them right from wrong, but there comes a time when you need that mentor or that model to be able to do that. And we as an organization really try to get that message across. So again, gentlemen, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Very well said.
Thank you so much, caller. Thank you very much. Well said, caller.
Guys, I have to pop out for a bit. I know Ted will take it from here with Doc. But before I go, I want to leave this for you guys to discuss. Let us, and I'll be listening off here as well. Let us not forget with the introduction of social media, the new type of music that is the preferred genre in our local space. You guys give your commentary on if you think it's impacting the minds of the youth today, if it's contributing to some of the criminal behavior. I'll leave that to you there, Ted.
Okay. Well, you be safe. You be safe.
Thanks, bro.
Brother. Yeah, man. And yeah, try heavy ball and I say and roll out, but that's how you just do it. Yes. But actually, and Rondell is right there. What about the influence of social media? What about the new types of music, the lyrics? What about the music videos that really denigrate womanhood and all of that, and even denigrate manhood too? Because if man is just reduced to just guns and flinging money and gold, then he's really just an object. He's just an objectified, as they call it, as what we do when women say we objectify them, right? Men also objectify themselves, and women also objectify them, because a large percentage of a lot of this music is in fact followed by women and girls also. So I just wanted us to, I don't know if you ever did any research on the impact of let's go with music and media, right, on the impressions and the mindset of our young men.
Probably 15 to 20 years ago as a student, one of my research projects was on the impact of music on juveniles. And all of the research that I found was none was Caribbean. Unfortunately, none of the music was Caribbean.
That's right. But
what the research actually showed, and it's not one of the areas that I have continued along the line of, but the schools are actually out in terms of this. You find approximately 75% of the research says that music influences the mind and can cause people to act out in a particular way, because music is affiliated to the mood. So if you are in a loving mood, you wouldn't play a certain type of music. If you're trying to set the mood for a good afternoon with your wife or your significant other or whoever, you would play a particular type of music. And if you want to set the mood for something else, then you play a different type of music. So the research shows to a large extent that music impacts the minds and it impacts the mood. And in a particular discussion that I had about a month ago, someone said, so what you're telling me is that if I listen to a song and I go outside and kill people? I said, no, it's not like that. We internalize things. And when you internalize some of the values that this music, for example, I know people may be waiting to abuse me, but one of the most recent genre of music in Trinidad and Tobago, when you listen to what it glorifies, and when the youths were impressionable, when they internalize that. So we internalize it, and then sooner or later, what they do is that they act on what they internalize. So my perspective is that, yes, the literature shows it to a large extent that music can be detrimental. And just permit me to add this. Quite often we leave the television to raise our children. So we're busy with something and we stick them in front of the television. So is that you hear about the term TV parent, and that has many detrimental effects as well. In fact, there's a particular research conducted many years ago where two sets of children, they've given Barbie dolls. So you put Ted in a room with a Barbie doll and you allowed Ted to look at Tom and Jerry. Well, the old Tom and Jerry. And you put Wendell in a room with a Barbie doll and you show him WWF wrestling, right? And after 10 or so minutes of constant exposure, what the children started doing is that Ted became more emotive and affective toward the doll, and Wendell became violent to the doll. We remember the minds are young and the impressionable, and the young
That's
minds
right.
are sponges, so they sap up what
That's right.
yeah.
Good, because I'm hearing that. And I remember, in all seriousness, even when growing up, right, how many of us wanted to be superheroes simply because of what we saw on television, right? How many of us, the whole concept of the caring and that kind of thing. I remember even when we were at school, I used to tease the girls in sixth form because we knew all of them in sixth form who used to watch Young and Restless. They used to have a way, right? They just used to have a way, right? The way they spoke, the way they related, the way they reasoned, the way they even had their own conflicts, right? You
Right.
saw the Young and Restless in it. So the thing is that clearly we have that. But you see, the thing is that I want us to look at something else. Because Trinidad and Tobago generally speaks the English language, we are an English speaking country, notwithstanding, of course, the vast numbers that will speak Spanish, right? But we are still English speaking. So as a result of that, because most of our influences come from the United States, who is also English speaking, the need to protect our language is not as crucial as, let's say, Canada or another Spanish speaking country. So you find that a lot of the radio stations, for example, have sort of bands or what they call quotas for how much English influence comes in, so it protects their own culture, it protects their own way of life. And I would dare say that what comes in a large percentage of the time is what used to manage and control a lot of our mindsets. You know, how we viewed sex, how we viewed women, how we viewed guns. All of these things are
How we view women.
Yes, how we view women, exactly. All of these are primarily as a result of the music we listen to, which is very, very funny because our women's groups seem to never have taken an issue with that, right? I wonder if you understand. Right? The only time I hear women take an issue with any music really is when Nappy sing garbage bag song. A garbage bag song, yeah, where somebody was vexed about that because they say, he begging too hard for woman and not giving the woman that free time to leave or whatever. Right? And they only attacked him because he was pretty much a low fence, right? In terms of the context of what comes in as derogatory to a woman, right? That we don't hear anything of, and it kind of gives them a sense, to me, a sense of what is that word? Hypocrisy, right? Because the truth is that nothing, I think, denigrates women.
We're losing your audio.
From abroad. So that is one. The other thing is we now have our own local brand of very, how to put it, very colorful but bright music, influential music. What do you say about it? The Trinidad style. And Mark, you could actually come in now because you are a radio man. So how is your response been to that?
Well, where I am concerned, I'm like where you guys are going now, and I have I'm into comments to make where this is concerned. I am very concerned about what is being allowed on air. Okay, it's a democratic country, but I think the option should be, or it should be mandated or made compulsory that radio stations / TV stations be mindful of the kind of content where music is concerned and to how it is being played, especially from the urban stations and stuff. I started with an urban station when 98.9 was just a brand new station to Trinidad and Tobago. But back in those days, we had to be very mindful of the content we put on air. Now it seems as though maybe for the business aspect of the whole programming thing is that what sells, what brings money into the media house. So
But
I'm asking myself, I try to stick to what I call we music, we culture, and I try to make mention that if we should stick to what we had before the Trinidad music, as we music, we culture, we the Trinbagonian music, calypso and soca, of past eras, um, never had anything really violent or
That's right.
demoralizing about it. So I would always used to say, if we play this more, if we mandate radio stations to play more of that kind of music, then the influence would be of a lesser um, impact on the youth and them. But now it's a commercialized thing where youths they use broken language on air. When I started, we couldn't do that. We had to stick with the English language, and now it's allowed because they say that's a Trini way of speaking, and it's a Trini station and all that. Yet still, they're under the banner of an urban station. So urban relates to, it's a kind of imported style of a radio formatting, like from America. You can point fingers straight to America because it started like that, But the thing about it, I am very concerned that it is being allowed from the authorities or the people who have the control to say, listen, if we have to put a ban on this, let us put a ban on it where public media is concerned. Okay, what you can tune on to. If you need to listen to that kind of music, I think it should be put in such a way that, okay, go to this club, and this club must not, the music from this club must not be heard in public. And otherwise, you have to be soundproofed inside this club so that the influence of the music will be heard in the neighborhood. Because there are neighborhoods where they have decent people living, people who want to bring up their children a certain kind of way. But there's a bar or a pub in the area or some recreational sporting place where the DJs will come and the whole village, because they don't like it easy, it's loud. So the whole village now is being bombarded with that kind of music and stuff. So the question is, it could be out of our hands, but should the authorities, I mean, even from the Ministry of Education and Culture, Community Development, Social Development, I mean, how come they don't say anything about that? And that is what is partly responsible for the negativity of what the youths and they turn to. On the other side, I wanted to ask you guys, the boys that I'm talking about, I don't like to talk too much about it on air, but I try my best with them. Their mother is a sick person, all right? And sometimes I get tired. Sometimes I reach a point where I don't know what to do again or how much I can say. I've seen changes with them, okay? I've seen that kind of changes with them. But how you can impact when like they leave, when they leave at my place and they go home and mommy is sick and they sometimes they tell me they're cooking little fellas to teenagers, so it bothers me. So what can I tell them? Give me some advice that I can use to impact on these young fellas, because I want them to stay on the straight and narrow road. I always tell them, sometimes I threaten them, able to do this and do that, this will happen and that will happen, and I need you guys to go. Tell me what I could tell these guys.
Dr. Wendell, I don't know. I may have a less scientific way of dealing with that one. But Dr. Wendell, like he dropped off and he'll be back on. But one of the things that I would definitely
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I know you had dropped off for a little while. So I'm going with the non-scientific way first. But since you're back on, go with the scientific way if you have one.
All right. Well, I heard part of the question that Brother Mark was asking. He said his sons, I think they're 13, 14.
Well, they're not my sons, really. There are some boys that you can call them my adopted sons.
Right.
It's mentees.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So the way that I would approach it is that I like to use more rewards than punishments. Right. So, I would say to my sons, here what? If you do this, this would be your reward, right? And if you don't do this, these are some of the consequences. So I like to show them, and it has proven to be quite useful in a host of contexts. You can show them rewards, but also show them consequences. Now, some people show punishment. Some people speak to the punishment and they speak to consequences. But my approach, I'm saying that this is my approach, a mixture of scientific, non-scientific, data-driven, is that we can use rewards. Okay, so this is your reward if you go down this path, and these are the consequences if you choose to go a different path. So that's an approach that I think that has been successful. And for me, Ted, well, as a child growing up, I was very much from a very small age. In fact, I tell people that I started school at 2.5 years old. I was trying to go to school behind my after my elder sister, and the teacher said as long as he's potty trained, send him to school. So I went to school for about 1.5 years without a school uniform, right? So I was very much driven to schoolwork and that sort of thing. And once, I was a student who would have attended Ted's class because I honestly found maths to be hard. And my mom challenged me. She said, all I need you to do is to make 60 marks. 60. She didn't aim for 75. She said, you make 60 marks and this is what I would get for you. I ensured that I got more than 60. I got about 65. Ted would know, our maths teacher then, Mr. Moses. I got more than 60, right? And I never forgot that I bugged my mother for about 1.5 years until she purchased me what was promised. So different people operate differently, right? So, but I like to use the reward approach and then show you, okay, Mark, David, this is your reward if you achieve this. But remember, there are consequences for not doing particular things. So if you break the law, these are some of the potential consequences. And one of the things that I think we need to do more often is to have our children look at that news. You see that 7 o'clock news or 6:30 news? Let them learn to look at it so they can see consequences for people who go down a particular path.
That's right. That's right. Beautifully said. And I would just also say from a more emotional perspective, is that one of the things that I've seen happen, and I have daughters myself, Wendell has sons. You have daughters, Wendell, or just sons? Right, sons. So the thing is that what you find happening with them is that they do not, I think their greatest punishment in the sense that I don't particularly have to give them licks per se.
Exactly.
Because they are so not wanting to have me feel disappointed. I think more than certain things give them a greater trepidation. So you find that, listen, they don't want, so I said that to say, Brother Mark, that one of the relationship that you will have with them is one that lets them know that, listen, you see me, I really love you guys. I really admire you guys. I'm seeing improvements. And point out the improvements as you see them, so that they know that in your eyes they are growing. When a child or a young person sees in a mentor that they are progressing, they do not want to ever step back, right? So that's one of the things in the self-talk. Oh boy, you guys realize how good you're improving with this cooking thing. I mean, you're all young enough. You all know. You tell them things like that. I just don't keep giving them, that you even bring up statistics, because boys respond to statistics. Hey, 20%, you are in the top 3% of young men who actually can cook at your age, right? And not only that, but you're doing it. So you look at things that they are doing well and you endorse it. You double down on the endorsement. And then things that they are not doing well, you let them know, and there are general things that you will let them know that will disappoint you. Man, if I get into any of them gang things, I'll be so disappointed because I know you all have so much in you,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And even now, my father is dead, and there were things like that he told me, and I remember up to the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I know. Oh gosh, look at the time, Doctor.
Hey,
Yeah,
Ted,
up to
Ted,
time.
before you go quickly, I just want to say this.
Yeah.
My father was never the beater. My father probably hit me once, and the once he hit me was about 3 strokes, right? Now, my father banned me from playing football for 1 week. You know, up to today, that was the most hurtful thing in my life. So we don't necessarily need to beat as punishment. With the
That's
children
right.
today, David, if you were to take away their tablet or that telephone, or those are that's a serious thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to find creative
Exactly.
ways. I'm saying that we need to discipline our children. There's no two ways about that. We need to discipline children.
Yeah.
But for some parents, you know, there's a very thin line between discipline and abuse, and we believe that you must beat the child into submission and you must cuff them in their head. And
Oh boy, we lose
That's
it.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Good.
I think we have
Well, Mark, I think it's time for you to take over.
yes, yes. Well, in closing, I want to thank
Wow,
you
it
guys.
was a
I think
beautiful
I told
afternoon.
you that
yes, it was.
that disappointing part, you know, because I know they don't want to disappoint me. I've been jamming with them for a long time. Is it that sometimes, well, I'm not rich or anything like that. Sometimes I feel like I can do more and I don't have the capacity to do more. But I promise that I will be with them all the time. I give them that kind of assurance. I tell them I love them. I make them hug me in public in front of their friends, you know, to make them know that I have your back. But gentlemen, it's
Yes.
been very, very, very interesting. I appreciate Dr. Wendell's Wallace comments and Ted Jones. Well, it's the first time I've met with you and Mr. Wallace, but
Yeah.
I think this is very impactful, and I'm going to ask Rondell to have you guys come back again for a different version
Thank you.
of that kind, that kind
Yeah.
of inspiration and motivation. I want to thank you guys very much, and do enjoy the weekend.
All right. Thanks a lot for having us. It's a
You're
pleasure.
welcome.
And we're both willing to be back.
Great.
Yes,
Great.
indeed. Okay, Mark. Bye for now.
All right, take care. Yes, take care, Ted. We'll chat.
Yes.
Yes, Dr.
The
Wendell. All the
future
best,
of
man.
talk is here. Power 102 Digital.
Well, that's it for today's edition of Hard Talk, Power to Digital Friday, where we put the focus on the Fathers Association. Well, I hear them say Fathers Association, but we have it down here as the Single Fathers Association, and they'll be back next Friday for another interesting edition of Hard Talk, Power to Digital Friday. We got news straight ahead.